Things did not go quite the way I had declared so optimistically. In my agitation and ignorance, I walked in the wrong direction, away from Valmiki's hermitage, deeper into the forest, into the night. It was only by luck that I was not attacked by a wild beast, or perhaps it was fate. It is hard to tell them apart, what we bring upon ourselves and what destiny determines. Finally, I fell to the ground in a deep sleep or a swoon, so exhausted that I no longer cared what happened. I don't know how long I lay there. When I awoke, it was to the flickering of smoky torches and a man with a long white beard calling my name. It took me a moment to recognize Valmiki. He looked a lot older than I remembered. He told me that Lakshman had searched for me for a long time. Finally, giving up, he had made his way to the ashram and explained what had happened. Valmiki sent him back to Ayodhya, saying he would take over since he knew the forest better. He gathered his students and came looking for me. Fortunately, they had thought to bring a pallet, for I could not have walked another step. They placed me on it and hurried back to the ashram, where Valmiki put me in the care of his wife Indira. The first few days in the ashram, I was numb. The determination I had experienced the night I walked away from Lakshman had vanished, its place taken by a thick, sticky depression that married me so that both past and future seemed unreal and disconnected. I swallowed without complaining or enjoying enough of whatever food the wives of the sages brought me to keep them from getting concerned. When they walked me around the ashram, because Indira Ma insisted that I needed exercise, I shuffled along. At every opportunity, I welcomed the opaque lake of sleep and fell into it until shaken awake. I lost sight for periods of time of who I was. When someone called my name, I often did not answer because I didn't recognize it. Then, one morning, I woke up and everything was devastatingly clear again. I remembered my life from girlhood onwards, how each important moment had felt, how excited I had been when I first met Ram, how I sensed that I had known him in another dimension. I felt again my excitement when he strung Lord Shiva's bow, my consternation when he broke it into pieces, my elation when I put the wedding garland around his neck, the long journey to Ayodhya with him riding by my side, my determination to follow him into exile, and his consternation, followed by joy because he wouldn't be separated from me. Our wanderings through forests, dangerous and exciting. Our simple life with its simple joys. I remembered the terror of my abduction, the endless nights under the sorrow tree in Ravan's garden, where even in the midst of despair, I trusted that Ram would save me. And then his heartless rejection of me, the fire into which I stepped, hoping to end the burning in my heart. The gods exonerating my innocence, and Ram contrite yet joyful beyond measure to get me back, ready to start our life anew. How willing I had been to start over even though he had wronged me. Our return to a dispirited and dilapidated country and helping my beloved husband, my king, to fashion it anew, filling it with abundance and hope. I remembered that ill fated day when Surpanaka had crept into the palace and forced me to draw Ravan's image. Was that when a seed of doubt that had somehow remained in Ram's mind all the while began to sprout? Was that when the whispers became so important to him? And then he had sent me away without even having the courage or the consideration to tell me to my face what he was doing to me and why. Without asking me, his helpmate and queen, what I thought should be done, he had banished me and his babies, all three of us equally innocent, because he believed that that was his duty to his people. But weren't we his people too? Didn't he have a duty to us? I wept as these thoughts raged like a whirlwind through my mind. I tried to harden my heart towards Ram, but I did not know how. I wept especially bitterly for my children, deprived of their inheritance, fatherless in the world. How would I ever take care of them? I cried hysterically until I threw up, and the women had to call Indirama. She spoke to me kindly but firmly in a tone that reminded me of my own mother Sunaina. Pull yourself together, she said sternly. You're not some weak willed wench. You can control your emotions. Remember all that you have survived. Behave like the queen you are. No one can take your dignity away from you. You lose it only by your own actions. Before she left, she gave me a hug and said, remember also that you are not alone. Valmiki and I are happy to have you stay with us as long as you want, for the rest of your life, if you wish. Your children will be part of our ashram family. I tried very hard after my talk with Mother Indira to do what she said. I no longer allowed myself fits of weeping. I repeated to myself what Mother Indira Ma had told me. Finally, I decided to go into the forest. Perhaps I would be able to think more clearly under its majestic trees. The women in the kitchen packed food for me. Indira Ma whispered prayers as she waved me goodbye. Come home before sunset, she cautioned. That is, when the creatures of the night take over the forest. She asked the ashram boys to point out a path that would take me to a honey grove. It is a good place, she said, though she didn't elaborate further. I found the honey grove without much difficulty. How different the forest was by day compared to the menacing wilderness I had thrashed through in the panicked dark. Was that how life too seemed when we flailed around in desperation? I ate my food, simply cooked vegetables and coarse ground rotis. The grove was filled with dripping honeycombs. I cupped my hands under one and licked the honey that pooled in them. For the first time since my banishment, I tasted what I ate and found it satisfying. But my heart was still heavy. I lay down, pressing my cheek to the earth. Help me, I whispered. You are my first mother. You kept me safe when there was no one to take care of me. Was it my imagination or did I feel warmth seeping into me? I turned over and regarded the leafy canopy. Flecked golden by the sun, the leaves rustled peacefully. Watching them, I fell into a dream. In the dream, too, I lay in the forest, but now I was surrounded by women. They walked around me with soundless, measured steps. They looked at me with wise and compassionate eyes, eyes that had known suffering. Some I recognized: Sunaina, Ahalya, Mandodari, Sarma, Kaikeyi. Some I guessed at: a monkey with a diadem on her head, who must be Tara, a tribal woman holding a half eaten fruit, who must be Shabari. Why? Even Shurpanaka was among them, a rare calm veiling her mutilated face. Endure, they seemed to say. Endure as we do. Endure your challenges. The words resonated through me. I stood up slowly, holding onto a tree trunk for support. I still felt anger towards Ram. His memory was a bruise that might never fade from my heart. But I was ready to focus my energies elsewhere. Living in the forest was not what I had planned for myself or my babies. But then, had I planned that Ram should come into my life like a tidal wave and sweep me away? Had I planned to be banished to the forest on the eve of our coronation, to be abducted or even rescued? Had I planned on the rumors upon our return or Ram's harsh decision? All these had happened without my choice, but I had survived them. Wasn't that all we could do as imperfect human beings? I started home. It was time for me to start thinking of the ashram as home with a more resolute step. I couldn't control what was done to me, but my response to it was in my control. All the way back, I pondered the word endure, what it meant. It didn't mean giving in. It didn't mean being weak or accepting injustice. It meant taking the challenges thrown at us and dealing with them as intelligently as we knew until we grew stronger than them. That was what I would work on. Over the next few days, I evaluated my newfound community, trying to figure out how best I might be of use to them. In my current state, I was no good at cleaning or cooking or carrying heavy pots of water back from the river. But their medicine woman, Dharinima, who was old and half blind, was glad for my help, more so when she realized how much I knew about healing herbs. She would tell me where to find the ones she used most commonly and send me off with a basket. I enjoyed my jaunts into different parts of the forest. I was delighted to discover some of the herbs and berries I had used in Mithila, including those that aided childbirth. I brought them all back and ground them into powders and unguents until our stores were full. I worked side by side with Dharnima, helping the people of the ashram. Mostly their troubles were minor ones, for they followed a healthy lifestyle, walking at sunrise to bathe in the river, then spending long hours in study or prayers, followed by daily chores, simple meals, storytelling or singing at night, and early sleep. At most, a child might break a limb, or an elderly resident suffer from a stubborn hacking cough, or one of Valmiki's students get stung when he tried to get a honeycomb. But often the forest tribes came to us with more serious problems. A leg gashed while hunting, now infected, or a child born with a breathing disease. Under Tharani Ma's guidance, I learned how to clean an infected wound by dousing it with spirits that burned and made even the strongest of men yell in pain, and to patch it afterwards. I often stayed with our patients afterwards, holding their hands until they slept, and it seemed that this made them heal faster. Word traveled through the forest that the woman who had suddenly appeared at Valmiki's ashram had the touch, and more and more tribals came to us for help. I welcomed the work. It kept me busy all day and tired me out at night so that I fell asleep as soon as I lay down on my bed of leaves. Dharanima woke me up, shaking my shoulder gently. You have got a visitor. My heart careened. I had to press down on my chest to calm it. Some of my wild hope must have shone in my eyes because she shook her head sadly. No, it is not him. Outside, two women sat on the porch, leaning exhausted against the posts. They must have travelled a long way because their peasant saris were crusted with mud. Looking closer, I recognized them. Urmila? I cried, shocked and worried and delighted at the same time. What are you and Saudamni doing here? She struggled to her feet and threw her arms around me in a desperation. Oh, sister, I was beginning to think I would never find the ashram. Are you? Thank God, you are all right. Over a meal of milk and puffed rice, which she devoured ravenously, Urmila told me her story. She had started growing suspicious as soon as Lakshman had returned to Ayodhya because he acted so unhappy and guilty, refusing to meet her eye at mealtimes. He wouldn't answer when she asked about me, and when she said she wanted to go with him to fetch me from Valmiki's ashram, he scowled darkly and snapped at her to leave him alone. Ram was acting strange too. He would shut himself up in his chambers, not eating, refusing to see anyone except Lakshman, who would spend his whole day in there with his brother. Ram didn't even attend court, Urmila said. Can you imagine that? That has never happened since he returned to Ayodhya, not even that one time, you remember, when he was so badly injured boar hunting. I was sure that something dreadful had happened to you. Perhaps there had been an accident on the way and you were dead. Or maybe some other Rakshasa had snatched you away. That would explain why Lakshman acted so guilty and why, even after 2 weeks, he made no effort to return to Valmiki's ashram to fetch you back. I asked Saudamini to check in the servants' hall, which, as you know, is a great source for news and gossip. But there too, no one knew anything. The chariot and horses that Lakshman had taken to Valmiki's ashram were in good shape, which proved that he hadn't been attacked, nor had there been any accident. What then could it be? Desperate for an answer, I stopped eating and took my bed. For 3 years, I starved myself. Believe me, it was no easy task. My stomach ached all day with hunger and I felt dizzy. On the fourth morning, Lakshman came in with a bowl of milk. If I drank it, he said he would tell me what happened. That is how I learned of the terrible injustice that was done to you. I said nothing to Lakshman after he told me your story. I was angrier with him than I had been with anyone in my entire life. How could he have agreed to be the agent of Ram's unjust folly? How could he have just left you like that in the forest? But I stitched a smile onto my face and went on with my daily duties. I didn't want him to guess my plan and imprison me in our chambers with his soldiers at the door. I told Saudamini to ask Shrava for help. We needed a guide who could take us to Valmiki's ashram. He would, I promised, be richly rewarded. Shrava did his best, asking around secretly, but no one seemed to know exactly where the ashram was. Finally, he brought a woodcutter to see us. The woodcutter said he could get us to the vicinity, but there was something odd about the ashram, he warned us. Sometimes one could see the roads that led to it, and sometimes they disappeared. He would leave us at the river, he said. After that, we would be on our own. I agreed and gave him enough gold to make him happy. I told Lakshman that I was worried about you and wanted to visit a goddess shrine that brought good luck to pregnant mothers, but the rule was I had to go incognito and on foot with no more than one female companion. He didn't like the idea, but he was so relieved that I was eating and talking to him that he didn't protest. Moreover, he was preoccupied with a new project. Ram's ministers, realizing that he had sent you away and seeing how depressed that had made him, had begged him to marry again. But Ram had flown into a rage and ordered them to get out of his sight. So now they were building a life sized gold statue of you, a golden Sita, that would be placed next to Ram in court. That was the only way they felt that he might get over his melancholy and take up his kingly responsibilities again. Ridiculous, I thought. Nothing could remove Ram's sorrow and guilt for abandoning his innocent pregnant wife the way he did. And nothing should. But let him have his statue. It will be a good reminder of the terrible decision he made. Anyway, here I am after 3 excruciating days of being lost in the forest. And don't you dare tell me to go back because I absolutely won't do it. I cried as I heard Urmila's tale, overwhelmed by her fierce loyalty towards me, for the sake of which she had risked both life and happiness. Then I forced my sorrows to the back of my mind so that Urmila and I could spend 3 beautiful days together. We laughed like girls, remembering childhood incidents, staying carefully away from subjects that could cause us grief. I showed her around the ashram where she tried her hand at various tasks, such as milking cows and husking grain, most unsuccessfully. On the fourth day, I sat her down and said, I love you for coming all this way through all these dangers, braving your husband's anger to be with me. But you have to go back now. You know that. You have seen me. You have seen that I am well taken care of. It is my destiny, for whatever reason, to be here now. But yours is to go back to the palace. Go and do what I can't. Make it into a true home for your husband. What has happened to me should not ruin that. Otherwise, it will be an added sorrow for me to bear. Go and be a comfort to the mothers. Urmila protested and raised and stomped her feet, but I was adamant. I did a good job of hiding how hard it was for me to let her go, and finally she gave in. Valmiki managed to procure a palanquin along with bearers from a nearby village so that she and her maid could make the journey back in comfort and safety. As I watched Urmila climbing carefully into the palanquin, an odd thought came to me. I would see my sister only once more, and that would be on the day of my final departure for other worlds. Valmiki sent two of his senior disciples with her, along with a letter he had written to Lakshman. I am not sure what the letter said, but when the disciples came back, they told me that after he read it, Lakshman had not been angry with Urmila, only grateful that she had written to him. Thanks for listening.